Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I just want to welcome my guests for this session. I'm going to start on my extreme far right. Megan and I have managed to get the guys in between us. Firstly, I'm going to introduce Megan Pydigadu, who has several CFO experience. Next to Megan is Clifford Appel, who is the CFO of the Dept Social Development. And next to me is Mr. Krish Kumar, who's the CFO of eThekwini Municipality. A round of applause for my panelists, please. Thank you for joining me this morning. I really appreciate you coming to share your experience and your knowledge. I'm going to start on my far right, Megan. I think time flies when one is going through their career, and the finance world has definitely changed. Let's start when your career started, and you know why you chose finance, perhaps. Yeah. What were you thinking at that time, and what has changed?
So I think when I started my career at school, I always loved accounting, finance, and maths, and so it was a natural progression to do the CA route. But I don't think I was very purposeful in terms of thinking, okay, I want to become a CA, but what do I want to do with that CA qualification once I've got it? And to become a CFO, I think at the time I thought, okay, well, I'll get my articles, got my articles with a Big Four audit firm, and I thought that's would equip me to be a really good CFO. And I think with hindsight, looking back, getting your CA qualification, going and doing articles in the Big Four environment, it makes you a great finance person. You know IFRS well, and you know how to be a great financial director. But do you really know how to be a CFO? And being a CFO is very different to being a financial director. And I think I probably would have, knowing that I wanted to be a CFO, I would have probably gone down the route of doing articles in a commercial environment just to get more commercial experience in terms of how you operate in a business as opposed to just being purely finance, because I think that's really what distinguishes a FD from a CFO. Is like, how do you partner with a CEO? How do you know what a good deal or a bad deal is? How do you know how to create shareholder value? How do you know how to do a restructure? How do you know how to implement new systems and get people to go along with you? Everything you've done in your CA and your articles, none of that equips you for that.
Thanks a lot for that, Megan. Clifford, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Amen.
If you look back to your younger self, what was your thought pattern for joining the finance world?
Well, strangely enough, I wanted to be a social worker.
Okay.
But then I found myself naturally good in accounting, mathematics, and that's where my journey started.
Okay.
As in a finance person. And coming from the private sector, I thought it was deliberate to get into the public sector space. But as Megan is saying, I didn't even think that I would become a CFO. All I knew as a young person, I want to be in finance. But finance is quite huge.
Yeah.
And therefore, you need to read. You need to get to understand the environment. You need to know exactly what you're going to do. Now, as a young person, you constantly are worried about your current environment. If you're just looking at the unrest that's happening right now in Westbury, I mean, as a colored person, I grew up in the same environment, going through the same issues, gender-based violence, drug trafficking, child trafficking, all those issues. But I think the important thing is to live beyond that environment. You need to become very uncomfortable so that it propels you out of that situation.
Definitely.
And I think what we do and the mistakes we make as young people, and even as a young finance professional, you're constantly worried about what's happening around you. And you're not looking at the big picture and say, where do I want to be? I think a lot of times, what we don't understand is that your current thoughts becomes your future actions. And if you constantly are worried about your environment and not looking beyond and looking at the future, you're going to stay within that environment and you're going to become comfortable in that environment. And if there's nothing that propels you out of it, so what you need to do as a young professional in finance is that you really need to get out of your comfort zone. Make your current environment very, very unpleasant for you to propel yourself out of it. You need to start visualizing the new, visualizing the fact that that financial director, what is it doing? Get an understanding, talk to people, read widely, because you can't become that financial director if you don't engage other financial directors, if you're not engaging other financial professionals, because you're currently just within your own environment, in your own little space, and you're not expanding your horizon. Now, that's very, very important, that you need to expand your horizon around what is finance. If you take the public sector, it's very wide, and very, very difficult. So you see the State Capture Commission, you saw the Minister of Finance, you saw other finance professionals within government, how they went wrong. And as I said to Megan earlier, it's that first time when you break the rule, and that's you're not prepared for that. You need to understand that integrity is extremely important. You don't break the rules, because it's going to come back to bite you in the future.
Thanks, Clifford. I'm going to come back to integrity slightly later, but I also want to thank you, Krish, for joining us this morning. What are the highlights that you remember about the start of your career?
Megan, I think sometimes people are ashamed to say they've worked for the same organization for 38 years.
Sure.
But I'm unashamed. I've been a CFO of eThekwini for 21 years. And I must say that I had other offers. And during those 38 years, I've enjoyed every minute of it. The public sector is not the best place to be in. I think you've heard Clifford refer briefly to ethics. But I think it's about making sure that you do the right thing when no one's watching, no skeletons in your cupboard at all. What really inspired me to stay in the public space is really about ensuring that I had something to give back. I was very grateful. My parents abandoned me to a certain extent. They wanted me to become a doctor. I didn't have the grades. I just didn't like physics and biology, but I excelled in maths and accounting, so it was natural that I become an accountant. And my father said, you will finance your own studies. So I had to study part-time, and I was very grateful to the municipality for offering me a trainee accountantship. I went through, and then I got to the stage where I completed my honors, and it came to serving articles, and I was offered articles. I'm not going to tell you which company offered me articles, but I'm glad in a way that I didn't take up the articleship. I stayed with the municipality, and I've not done the same thing every year. You know, they say that experience is about doing the same thing every year. It's about the SOL theory. Mine has never been like that. As early as the 5th year of my career, I joined the World Bank consultancy team, and I was very grateful for the council for allowing me to actually be part of that team, where we actually carried out work throughout Africa. I've traveled throughout the globe in terms of promoting creditworthiness of cities and how we ensure that we actually have stable finances and we're able to do borrowings, credit ratings, and those kind of issues. More recently, I've joined C40. I'm a board member, and it's about what Clifford referred to about the environment. I really believe in the triple net bottom line, and I'm now ambassador for climate change and zero emissions and making sure that we can save the planet. Very grateful to my city for allowing me these privileges and at the same time keeping a steady ship. So I think it's not about, you've got to have passion in whatever you do. So for me, it's about the passion of being a CFO, the pride of being a CFO, and at the same time, just not looking at what's within your own corridors, but looking broadly, looking globally. On every trip I've come back, I've written a report, and I've learned throughout the world. So I've been very grateful, and I really, you know, lots of people, I know the new trend now with the millennials is to actually stay in a job 3 to 5 years. My son says to me, if I stay more than 3 years in this job, something is wrong with me. So I'm not going to hope nobody knows my son. They're going to rat on him to his bosses. But really, I want to just say to you, loyalty is important.
Yeah.
You can still become very significant in an area where you will not stop growing if you stay and if you are able to continue to grow and to continue to inspire and motivate people. At the same time, you've got to be able to step aside at the right time to make sure that you're not clogging up the system, and I've always been open to that. I've always told my bosses, I'm happy to step aside, bring in somebody. A mentorship program's got to be there. So my message to you is passion, excellence. Make sure that you're benchmarking yourself continuously in terms of what you do, and you don't have to change your job every 5 years. the public sector is still a very good space, and there are still very ethical people in the public sector, and people like you can make it even more ethical. Thank you.
Thanks, Krish. That's quite comforting to hear. I'm going to go back to you, Megan, and I think let's just go back to the decisions that one makes at a young age. And you say that you didn't necessarily have to do your articles at a Big Four. Let's speak about what the options are, and if one has made a certain choice, can they change their minds? Is the finance community adaptable enough to allow you to change your mind and still grow your career as a young person?
So I think when I was doing articles, there was only the choice of going into the audit profession. There wasn't the opportunity to do your articles through commerce. And I think now a lot of people go and do their articles, and it's a grudge thing, and it's something that you want to do and get out of it after 3 years and then go into commerce and do a proper job. And I think if you've got a passion for going into commerce, then my preference would have been at that time, I would have preferred to do my articles through commerce, because I think I would have gained a lot more insights in terms of how to be a good commercial CFO. If you know and you love the audit profession and you want to stay in that type of role, then the audit profession is the right place for you. But I do think that the CA qualification and the opportunity for where you can do articles now has changed significantly. At one point it was only the banks, and now there are a lot of corporates that are offering articles as well. And if you know that that's your purpose and your passion, then I think you need to follow it and go via one of those routes as opposed to the traditional route of doing it through a Big Four audit firm.
So I think it's always appreciated in a forum like this, where somebody gives a heartfelt experience to say, this is why my life turned out the way it did. Thank you very much, Clifford, for sharing. Let's just speak about, prior to you going into the public sector, you said that you started in the private sector. Let's just speak about the differences there, and what are the benefits for a young person in the environment?
In the finance world, I don't think there's any difference between the public and the private sector.
Okay.
And therefore, it's all about what you want to achieve in life. We always have perceptions on both sides. We've got perceptions about the public sector, and there's perceptions about the private sector. But when we engage as CFOs in the networking sessions, you realize that you're on the same page. It's different politics, but it's politics. So for the young person, it's important that you need to know where you want to be. Okay. You need to determine your own destination, and you need to decide, not allowing other people to decide for you. We constantly are boxed. We're living in a fast environment. For the young people out there, the environment is fast. There's much more opportunities. There's technology that's ever changing. Yesterday we were talking about, now you're talking about there wasn't internet. Then there was disruptions. Now you're talking about Internet of Things. So it's constant changes all the time. And in the finance environment, it's the same thing. And if you're not keeping out and listen and hear, because also the one thing that I realize, and the mistake you make as a young person, we tend to speak too fast, and we speak more than what we listen. Now, you need to sit back and try to get in much more and listen to other people, learn from other people. Because as a young person, I could just jump and interrupt a conversation when it's not even my turn. And that's the mistake that we're making as young people. So learn quite a lot. Get out of your comfort zones. You can't learn. The other thing is, we want to go fast, as Krish said. We want to go fast through the system. You want to be in a position every 2 years and think that you're going to achieve. I've seen a lot of my peers that's not good managers because they came through fast through the system. No pain, no gain. You have to pay your fees. You can't want to run through the system so quickly and become a CFO overnight. You see the mistakes people make. And in the public sector, I mean, Krish is 21 years as CFO. This is my 11th year as a CFO in the public sector. But there's not a lot of us that even achieve 5 years as CFOs in the public sector. But it's because we've learned. It's because you went through the pain process. There was pain and there's gain. And if you're not doing that, you want to go very fast through the system, you're going to find yourself at a space where you start making decisions and make big decisions and make big mistakes, because once your reputation is damaged, your career is over. And we have colleagues out there that until today are unemployed and they can never enter the public sector space, but also not even the public sector space. They can't enter the finance world anymore, purely because they went too fast through the system, never learned to listen, too quick to make conclusions. Because constantly also, as CFOs, you constantly having a whole range of information, lots of information, and you need to consume all that information and make a constructive and informed decision. As young people and as a young person, you just want to process it fast and make a decision without making sure that you've covered all your bases. And in the finance world, there's no time for mistakes. You make a mistake, your career is over. And therefore, this is what we need to emphasize.
Thanks for that, Clifford. I'm just going to come back to you, Krish. And the point that you had made is about perhaps I will term it passion. You knew what you wanted to do and you knew where your heart is. And regrettably, you didn't receive that support from your family. And I think as a gentleman, you perhaps also want to get married and want to pursue a young lady, and you took the hard route. You took the route of having to work and study and propel yourself to where you wanted to be. Perhaps you can speak about that just for a little bit, for somebody who is in the audience and desires to do a certain thing but doesn't necessarily have that support.
Certainly. I think as Clifford rightfully said, my spiritual master always said, no pain, no gain. So I think it's about this continuous learning. But I think to study and to actually keep a relationship, I can tell you when I got married, my wife will be a testimony to the fact that I got married on the Sunday, and Monday I had to come back and complete financial statements. So there was no honeymoon. And my boss told me that you shouldn't have chose this time to get married. So I had my honeymoon in December. But that's life. You've got to make those choices. And you never stop learning. I finished my doctorate last year, and I only say this because you're asking what sacrifices you make along the way with family, and it was my wife that inspired me to do it. She felt that things were getting rough at the council, and just generally when you look at things, and am I marketable enough to be able to pursue any alternatives? Who would want to employ I don't want to give you my age, it's 55 plus. Who'd want to employ somebody 55 plus that's graying and that's had only one job? And whilst I said to you I was marketable perhaps earlier, and she inspired me, she gave me the support, and I cracked that. I had to change stream because I was in the accounting field. I had to go back and do a master's in administration, which took me about 18 months to 24 months to complete, and then I did a doctorate in 18 to 24 months. So the last 4 or 5 years I did that, and then these people at National Treasury, those of you in the public sector, I hate them with a passion, but I respect them with all the love that they deserve, because they've kept the country going, they saved us from a lot of crises, and when you hear Nene yesterday and on the issues, you'll know the ethics of National Treasury. So I really love that part of National Treasury. But they made us do minimum competency in between that. And again, I had to rely on my family to support me. So I think it's about making those sacrifices, but striking the balance for anyone. It's not easy. One has got to be disciplined, one has got to be focused. I'm a 24/7 person. I promise you, send me an email and you get a response within 24 hours.
Sure.
You can test it at any time you like. So I'm very passionate about that. Even if you give me a WhatsApp message, there will be a response, guaranteed. And I will still keep the core values of what I need to do going. So it's about how you juggle that. And I think as professionals, we need to manage that. Also, just pardon the slight pouch I'm carrying. I've been traveling a little bit. I'll lose it, I promise you. You see me in January, I would have lost the 5 kilos that I've gained. But it's about that balance in life. It's about making sure that you, firstly, family is first. Secondly, knowing that the job that you do puts bread on the table. And it can't just be seen as a job. If you see it as a job, then you're sadly mistaken. It's got to be seen as something that you really want to do, that you love being part of, and that you really want to make a difference. And particularly in the developmental state that South Africa is in. Any one of you that's here that's got something to offer, every one of you should have. And I'm glad the EFF, I'm not a supporter of the EFF, by the way, but I'm glad they're appealing to the youth, because it's the youth that will make the difference. And the question is, how many of you have voted? And how many of you are holding your politicians accountable for service delivery, accountable for all the election promises they've made, and making sure that they're giving us a better South Africa? All of the promises that were made. So those are some things that we need to hold people accountable for. So it's for me, it's about how you achieve that balance in life, how you can make a difference in people's lives, and if you see that as your passion. So whether you're the CFO of whatever, one of the top 100 companies in the JSE, or one of the top 10 for that matter, it doesn't matter. What matters is, are you making a difference? And if you're not making a difference, you shouldn't be there. If you're in the wrong career, step out. You'll find many people have stepped out and they found their niche in life. And never be afraid of losing your job.
Sure.
Never be afraid.
Sure.
I promise you, it'll be one day that you'll go through hell. But after that, opportunities open. Nothing bad in life happens.
Can I just
Nothing
comment
in
two
bad.
things?
Sure, Clifford.
Just two things that Krish is emphasizing. And I touched on the last one. The minute you start fearing hunger, and I think this is what I've learned from a former boss of mine. The minute you fear hunger, that's when people see you vulnerable. And that's where people will start pushing you around, and you're not going to achieve your own goals, but you're going to achieve someone else's goals. That's the one thing. In the public sector, if you're in the public sector and you want to make money, you're at the wrong place. Because the public sector is not about making money. It's about deliver services to other people. And therefore, somehow, some way, it almost needs to be a call if you want to be in the public sector, because you shouldn't be if any one of you want to make money and think in the public sector there's money, there is no money to be made in the public sector. We deliver a service, we see what's the impact, and we constantly have to change to deliver better service. And as CFOs, we the catalysts, we the strategic partners, and we enable service delivery in our society. Just want to add those two things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Clifford. But you know, when I was doing my research and we were debating on which topics will make it to the stream of events in the past 2 days, a lot of young people asked that I ask you this, and this I'm going to open to all three of you, is you have your social life, and social lives are slightly different to what they were, perhaps when you started your career. You also want to choose a life partner, you want to study further, you have a partner who's pursuing their goals. How do you support your partner's goals? How do you, without seeming selfish, pursue your own goals? How do you then balance family and friends? And at the same time, you spoke about for the past 5 years you've been studying, Krish. How do you then pursue yourself and your studies and make sure that you sort of still alive? Maybe Megan?
Okay, so I think a lot of the time it does come down to compromise, and you need to know what you're compromising on and make that decision consciously. And then I think the other important thing is boundaries. I think often in the workplace we get caught up and we don't want to say no because we think it's going to limit our career. But sometimes, sorry, you do need to say no, and you need to know like where to put those boundaries in. And sometimes there are things that are important for family. And I know when you start off your career, you're putting in a huge amount of hours, but by the time you get to like a CFO level, for me, I've got kids and my family is important for me. So I would put stuff in my diary where it's time for my family or time for my kids. And I think the whole idea of working 8 to 5, I think that's something that has to go out of the window. You've got a week and you need to work out that time accordingly, what best suits your family, what best suits your partner, what best suits you, because you also need time for yourself, and what best suits time for the company. Mm-hmm. I also used to, in the previous company I worked at, my boss was based in the States, and I used to make sure like between 6 and 8 o'clock, I'm not contactable during that time. That's my family time. I want to have dinner with my family then, but I'm very happy to get back on at 8 o'clock at night and work then. But it's like breaking up your day and working out how you can give your best to everyone without compromising totally on everything.
Thanks for that. Do you want to add?
I think as a young person, I went through that. My son is in the audience. When my son was born, I was busy with my master's degree, and his mother was busy with her honors degree. So both were studied, and he was just born. So we needed together to decide how we're going to bring up this child whilst we're still studying. And it's all about planning together and commit to what you do. Because also, if you not commit to the plan, it's not going to work. It's all about planning and self-discipline. But also the most important thing around that is that you need to make sure that you also understand, as Megan is saying, understand the boundaries. A lot of times we're not disciplining our bosses. As 11 years in the public sector, I never had an email, work email on my phone, never. And I made a conscious decision that when I go home, it's time for family. Because as CFOs, you spend sometimes between 6 and 8 in the office. You spend long hours in the office. But when you go home, you need to understand that that's time for the family. But if you need to work, you also need to go negotiate that time out with your family. So you need to discipline other people to respect your time also. I also don't take business calls after 9 o'clock for the last 11 years. And people understand that. My bosses understand it. And yes, it's a very difficult environment that a politician call you and you're not answering the phone. But they know that Clifford will never answer his phone after 9 o'clock. Clifford is not contactable over weekends. Especially when I'm saying I'm not around. But even when I'm around, they know. My colleagues know they will never try to call me over a weekend or when I'm going on holiday. Because once I went on holiday, and I sat on the beach and I've been on the phone the whole time. The next minute I saw, there's my kids going and my wife. I'm like, what? And she said, we're going home. Because you don't know how to separate work. You don't have a balance, work-life balance. And that's when I realized that when you, with your family, the bottom line is discipline other people. They must also respect your time. If you're not going to do that, no one is going to do that for you. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, you need, with a partner, life partner, with friends, you need to work out those things. But friends, I always say, if you manage to have a friend from grade 1 up until age 40, you're very fortunate. Yeah. It's very rare that it happens, that you're still keeping those friends. And I always say to young people, these friends of yours that influencing you, or you allow them to influence, in 20 years' time, they will be gone. Because they are part of your journey. So constantly we're thinking that the partners we're having right now, the friends that we're having right now, they're going to be with us forever. They're just part of the journey. And therefore, the discipline lies with yourself. It's about yourself and your future. There's a saying by Charles Kettering, my interest lies in the future because I intend spending the rest of my life there. And that's how we should live our lives. Your current thoughts becomes your future actions. Thanks.
While in preparation, Krish, you spoke about your character and you spoke about controlling your ego, and one must be humble. And earlier on, Clifford spoke about ethics as well. Just before we open up to the floor for questions, can you speak about being true to self and your character, and what makes one a successful manager or a CFO, and how does your career grow by staying humble, as you spoke about?
Yeah, I think like any young professional, when I got there to my moment, I thought I've arrived because who I was, and it was all about me. My ego was bigger than any one of you in this room, I promise you. I was so arrogant that it's embarrassing. But fortunately, my spirituality led me to a spiritual master that tamed my ego. And it made me realize that people are what will actually make you or break you. So your leadership is not about you. It's all about relationships. Every stakeholder matters. So for me, it's about, the journey for me has been about building those relationships. I'm able to sit here. I virtually spend every day in the office. If I'm in the office 3 times a week, it will be a good week. I spend a lot of time out of the office, and I've got to have trust. I've got to have confidence. I've got to have a work ethic that people respect, to know that I'm not shirking my responsibility and that we are a team. And together we can achieve more. So I really strive for that, and I really make sure that my entire team knows what I'm doing. We have our regular feedback sessions, and although I'm away at times, I don't stay away from the office for more than 10 days. If it's a business trip, generally, and the day I come back, the next day, and I travel economy class, I want you to know, although I'm entitled to travel business class, it's 4 times the price. I'd rather take some of my colleagues with me, but I think cost saving is an important issue. So it's for me about getting back the very next day, catching up, giving feedback, sharing, and really making sure that you're a caring person. Because I can assure you, it's even the tea steward, even what we call the messenger at work, that can set you up. So it's about really making sure that you value every one of those relationships. And I've gone to the nth degree to make sure that I've got a team, to make sure that all of them appreciate one another, and more so that I appreciate them. And to give love is much more easier than giving hatred, even if it's a bad decision. Whenever I start a disciplinary inquiry, firstly I tell them, people, just understand this is in terms of a process. I don't like this particular thing that I've got to do, but I've got to follow the process. I've got to do it. No love lost between the two of us. This is a matter between you and what you've transgressed or potentially transgressed, and that's a process we've got to follow. And there are prescribed sanctions that we've got to follow, so please appreciate that's what I'm doing. So nothing personal. And I think a lot of people, very senior people that I've actually had the displeasure of taking through a disciplinary process, as uncomfortable as may be, you make that journey comfortable. You make them feel really appreciating that this is not something that you look down upon people. It can happen to the best of us. Now let's get to ethics. Ethics will not happen to us, because ethics is about ethics. It cannot be that even you took half a cent, or you had poor judgment on any issue, or you looked the other way. It can't be like you're half pregnant. Pardon that.
It's either you are or not.
Absolutely. So for me, ethics is about what CFOs should be about. We're the last line of defense. And I really want to say that don't have any skeletons in your closet. The slightest thing that a politician has on you, they will bring up. So remember that even if you took a trip and you misbehaved, it's going to come up. I'm fortunate I don't consume alcohol, and I don't socialize. So whenever I go out, I'm the boring person that nobody wants to travel with. Good luck to me. So I sit in my lonesome self and read my book in the economy class while other people socialize in business class. That's well and good. But I'm saying be very careful about what skeletons you leave, because that's what will actually be finding you wanting. Clifford, I just want to differ with you. There's a big difference between the public sector and private sector. The public sector, everybody wants to be your boss. Everybody. I've got 210 councillors, I promise you. Every one of them gives me instructions. Every one of them. Every one of them wants you to do things for them. They want favors. They want to shift that budget around like it's just a soccer ball that you can kick around. They want to move their own interest in these matters. Not to say that the board, you've got shareholders, I know, but it's a far more structured environment in the private sector. So those of you that are coming to the public sector, it's the best place to be. That's where you add value. That's where you change the lives of people. That's where you actually can contribute to development state. It changes you from being somebody that's criticizing to be part of the system that you can change. And tough times don't last, but tough people do. So if you're a tough person, come and join the public sector. We've got a lot to offer you, and I promise you it will be a very rewarding career. Not just about return on investments, triple net bottom line, all of those issues, but really contributing to a better South Africa, to a South Africa that contribute globally to actually creating employment, creating jobs, and touching the lives of many more people. So I really invite you to join us in this journey, Clifford and I, and Megan, in terms of coming to the public space and really making a difference to the quality of lives of people.
Thanks so much, Krish. I know there might be one or two people who have a question. I'm going to say yes to this gentleman because in the previous session I opened up, and then there's another gentleman there. So if we can start in the front. Please start by giving us your name and where you're from. Please kindly stand and then give us the question.
Thank you. My name is Pat Boyce. I'm from Chwewu Attorneys. Just wanted to latch on to something that they have presented. Brilliant presentation, encouraging the young people to avoid some mistakes that we make when we go through these careers. One thing that I wanted to probably highlight is the aspect of time management. We all have 24 hours in a day, but some seem to be able to have more than others, and you wonder where they get that time from.
They woke up earlier.
Yes, they wake up earlier, and they're able to discipline themselves to shun away from certain things. When we grew up, there was no Twitter, Facebook, nothing like that. So it was pretty much stratified how you would spend your day. But these days, I find that people spend so much time on social media. And if you look at it and you say to yourself, I've spent the past 30 minutes, what have I accomplished? What have I done? What value has added onto my life from this thing that I've just said? Some would be looking at, just gossip, just things that don't add value really. So my issue is to say the young people going forward ought to learn how to discipline themselves as far as social media is concerned, because they can spend so much time. At the end of the day, their careers won't grow in any manner because they've been focusing on things that are not adding value to them. You would rather be reading books that can edify, or if you're on social media, let it be something which is going to benefit your career, not just gossip.
Thank you so much.
I think that's the mistake we all make as people coming out of township and went through the university. It's naturally that we're going to leave the township. A lot of times we leave township. But it's also about going back and inspire the people that's in the township. And also, not every one of us leave the township. We still have family there. We still go back there every day. But it's important that you inspire the young. Get them that understanding that I've been here. I've been with you. I've went through the same situation. But my interest was in my future. And that's the message that we constantly need to give to our young people in the township, is that what is your interest? Where is it that you want to be? Do you want to be out of this township? Do you want to be self-sufficient? But also not allowing those bad role models, because that's what we leave behind when we leave township as black people. We leave behind the role models, and the role models are your drug lords because they drive the BMWs, they're wearing the good clothes. And that's the instant gratification of our young people. We want instant gratification. We want to be in with the trends. And the colleague here was speaking about spending a lot of time on social media and not doing things that add value. It's all about inspiring young people to do what adds value, what is going to change the future. Coming from a household where my parents never worked in their entire life, as I said in my opening statement, is that you need to make that environment so uncomfortable for you that it really rocket and propel you to get out of it. And that's what propelled me out of it. And I said, I don't want to be a drug dealer. I don't want to end up where some of my peers ended up in jail. And then you look back and you feel sad about it. But it's because we leave the township and we're not giving back to the township. And for me, we have to go give back to the township. We have to give back. And it starts at home. Charity starts at home. Your own family. Yeah. You've got cousins. We don't even do that. And that's what we need to start doing. You've got cousins, you've got nephews, you've got nieces. And that's where we need to start going back, so that we're not necessarily say we're taking out all the skills out of the township, but let the skills remain with it in the township. And it's very sad that you're constantly having people blaming everything. You're blaming the drugs, you're blaming the violence, you're blaming apartheid, we blame this. But at some point,
take accountability.
Because you've been too busy to consume the negatives, too busy to consume the current state, but not focusing on where you really want to be. So the message is, think about the future.
To my panelists, I'd like you to give me 2 lines that you would say to your younger self. So in wrapping up this session, Megan, I'll start with you. 2 lines to yourself.
I think find your purpose and be authentic.
Thank you. Cliff?
My interest lies in the future, and I intend spending the rest of my life there.
Thank you.
I think 2 lines, it's hard. I believe in do it now. Do it now. So whatever you have to do, do it now. And certainly it's about making sure that you understand tough times. Those tough times come and they go. And as I said, tough times don't last, but tough people do. So really make sure that you capitalize on the moment, you actually manage yourself appropriately, and that you're actually able to actually give back, most importantly, in whatever sphere that you're involved. If you're not giving back, you've wasted this life, trust me.
I think that was 14 lines. A round of applause to my panelists. Thank you so much.